Je pense sans cesse à toi.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to The Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot-button topics in food and beverage. I'm your host, Catherine Cole. We have quite a lineup of culinary thought leaders here for this special episode we are recording at the Oregon Truffle Festival. The first of our three toothsome courses today is the homely, humble truffle. Should it be a controlled substance? Next, we'll tune into the current state of music in restaurants. And finally, reboot your microwave. Our esteemed panelists here at the beautiful Allison Inn and Spa in the heart of the Willamette Valley are the world-renowned food science author and expert, Harold McGee. Welcome, Harold.
Thanks.
And Dave Arnold, a culinary technology author and expert and founder of the Museum of Food and Drink. Hey, Dave.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Peter Meehan, executive editor at Lucky Peach and cookbook author. Thank you for being a repeat panelist, Peter.
Thanks for having me back.
All right, let's bite into our first course, the truffle. Is it a narcotic? These fragrant little fungi are sold on the black market. They're checked for authenticity. They command thousands of dollars per kilo. Theft and murder are part of the trade. And recent research has shown that this homely little tuber can actually get you high. Peter, is there something illicit about the truffle that we should know about?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot to say about the state of drugs, because out here in Oregon, it seems way chiller than it does in New York, where I live. But truffles are drug-like in that the quality is variable and hard to certify, that prices range from dealer to dealer, and depending on your relationship, you can sometimes get better than someone else. But I think in the news, there's been articles on the BBC and in Scientific American about the discovery of anandamide. Harold, is that what it's called?
Anandamide.
Anandamide.
Yes.
I'm not the science guy. And so I think the someone's research in Italy is advancing the idea that there's some bliss molecule inside truffles that makes them drug-like and makes us have a drug-like reaction to them. But in the last 2 days of tooling around Oregon wine country with these guys, I've come to hear perhaps a different take on that. So Harold, because you can pronounce the word that I can't. So can you tell us more about that?
Well, I did take a look at this study from a couple of years ago, and the first thing to notice is that very few other people working in the field have referred to it, so it doesn't seem to be carrying a lot of weight in the research community. And if you actually crunch the numbers, it's true that truffles do appear to have this compound that's related to what you find in cannabis that would that makes us high. And why I said cannabis and not cannabis, I don't know.
It makes
too many truffles.
Yeah.
It's true that it does seem to have this molecule, but the quantities are such that you would essentially have to be a truffle yourself in order for it to affect your brain. So my guess is that it's one of these studies that gets a lot of attention in the week that it's published, and then it'll be forgotten about. But Dave, do you get high on truffles?
No, I don't.
You're just high on life?
Well, but the good thing about drugs, right, is threat of violence. I remember once I bought a truffle in the south of France from an old lady with a shotgun who had like a cigar. She was chewing on like a cheroot, and she had a shotgun. I bought this truffle, and I put it, and we had an overnight train that we were taking, and we were going, and I was going to stay at someone's house in Paris, and so we lived in with this rotting, freaking truffle in the train. And my wife, to this day, she was getting ill because also in France they serve you these wretched fruits de mer platters with uncooked mussels on them, which poison the hell out of you. It's just a rancid freaking idea, an uncooked mussel. And she got violently ill, and then combined in this train cabin with this freaking truffle. We then gave it to our host, and their freaking dog ate it. And so, so my wife detests black truffles to this day, and she actually likes the Oregon black truffle. She's like, I don't want it. Get it away from me. I was like, no, it doesn't smell. It's not like a black. And this is part of the problem, I think, with the Oregon truffles. I was like, it's not like like the Perigord truffle that you hate so much. You know what I mean? It's a different product. So, yeah.
When you mentioned violence, I thought you were going to mention all the episodes of, people holding each other up at gunpoint to steal truffles.
That's why this lady had a shotgun.
Because she had been held up before, but someone had stolen her truffles.
Look, man, like these guys were like, people think that different countries are all the same. No, I mean, different. Like, they're the same. Like, this lady felt like she needed a shotgun to protect her truffles, and her investment in time. So, yeah, she packed heat. She was walking around to the markets,
See, it's just like the drug trade.
Yeah. Just like the drug trade.
People used to get shot over vanilla, too. I mean, it all depends on the price. People get shot over vanilla all the time. And when you used to be a vanilla buyer, like in Madagascar, you would have to go with an armed retinue because the values, there was a price spike. When was that, Harold? In the 80s, 90s?
80s, yeah.
Yeah, there was a price spike where all of a sudden, one year to the next, was an order of magnitude higher. And so huge criminal elements came in, lots of violence. We had violent lime problems 2 years ago in Mexico. There was a cartel / weather incident that caused people to hijack lime trucks. So,
But but on the good side of drugs, are there other foods that I can eat and get high that you guys know of?
I would just do drugs and then eat food.
Wait a minute, Dave. I feel like I was looking online. I feel like I found a recipe of yours for nacho truffles or truffle nachos.
Oh yeah, well, so in advance of coming to the Truffle Festival, they shipped me some truffles because I was like, I got to be honest, I've never cooked with Oregon truffles before, so why would I talk about it? I don't know. So they sent me some, and I was making for various reasons. I have children, and by the way, nachos are delicious. You should not be ashamed of liking nachos. They're delicious. There's nothing wrong with nachos. So I had nachos, and I had just had the truffles, and I was like, you know what? These work. This works. You know what I mean? And so then I had Dax, my younger son, who wanted nachos again. I had bought the truffle shaver and had him shave. He would look up at me. I'd be like, keep going. He would keep shaving the truffles on. Yeah, good. Super easy. Just make your nachos.
Put truffles on top.
Done. Easy peasy. Yeah. Well, what do you think? What do you think the truffles? Do you like nachos, Peter?
I love nachos, and the idea of putting truffles on nachos sounds good. Though I don't know that nachos don't need truffles.
Okay, so the black truffle, which
right.
the black Oregon truffle, right? It just adds kind of like a richness. So you remember the smell, like of the kind of the smell changes over time, right? So like in the later times when it takes on kind of those more roasty notes, just imagine just a little extra richness on your nacho. It's not like truffle cheese. It's not like black truffle cheese where you're like, oh my god, like I wouldn't want my nachos to do that. You know what I mean? Not me personally, but just that little extra like kind of animally richness out of the black Oregon truffle on the nachos I thought was nice.
So there's a bandwidth of acceptable truffledness to your nachos. No truffle oil on your nachos?
Oh, hell no. No, truffle oil is poison.
Well, half the time it's fake, isn't it?
Yeah, well, but I don't care whether it's
More
fake.
than half the time. Yeah.
But Harold, do you
really?
care whether it's fake or do you want it to be delicious?
No, if it tastes good, good. But usually it doesn't. Usually it's kind of harsh and just one note and not very nice.
How do you make fake truffle oil? I mean, because you can put truffles in oil and make truffle oil. That's not fake truffle oil. Are you against that?
No.
That's okay. So what's fake truffle oil made from?
You buy a chemical from a chemical supply house and you dose oil with that one chemical, and that's all it takes to mimic white truffle, especially.
Yeah. So it's just a question of it being a one-note Nancy, and then being overused. I mean, I'm all for artificial flavoring if it's good. Not really, but I'm all for things that taste good.
Harold, can I break in? What is the aroma and flavor of a truffle? Is it umami? I mean, it seems like it has a feral quality as well. So how would you technically describe that aroma and flavor?
So flavor is a combination of taste and smell. Mm-hmm. What happens on your tongue and what happens in your nose. And umami is a taste. That's something that happens when you actually put the truffle in your mouth and eat it. The magical thing about truffles, I think, is the smell. And all you have to do is take a whole truffle, hold it up to your nose. You don't have to put it in your mouth. You can just be amazed at the complexity of the aroma from the whole truffle itself. So to me, the magic of the truffle is in the smell.
And the aromas are incredibly complex and not that well understood. I don't know. We've been talking about that a lot over the last couple of days with the aroma in the truffle coming and going, changing, different aspects presenting themselves. is it known? Has anyone ever done a breakdown of what makes the smell of a truffle?
People have done analyses of European truffles, but not yet Oregon truffles. And with the European truffles, it depends on the truffle. It depends on how it's been harvested. It depends on so many different things. So that's one of the, I think, the distinguishing things about truffles just as an ingredient is that they are so complicated and so variable. You buy an apple, you eat an apple, it tastes like an apple. But these truffles that we've been enjoying start out with one kind of aroma, and then it evolves. When we found them in the forest, they had one kind of smell. 10 minutes later at the picnic table, it was a little bit different. Shaved over food, it's different. And that's, I think, the cool thing about it, is that it isn't just one thing.
Well, that's the perfect transition, and it's getting close to noon, so I think we can take a quick break and taste something. We have here some fresh truffle butter provided to us by Charles Ruff, culinary director of the Oregon Truffle Festival. And we're going to smear it liberally on some baguette and try it alongside Oregon Pinot Noir, which should be a fabulous pairing. Now, I'm just going to put my wine geek hat on for a moment because I've been dying to taste this wine. It's from an Oregon label called Domaine Nicolas J. But the winemaker is actually Jean-Nicolas Maillot of Domaine Maillot-Camusset in Vaune-Romani, which is one of the most highly sought-after villages in Burgundy. The winemaking style at Maillot-Camusset was shaped by Henri Jaillet, who is this mythic figure in Burgundian winemaking. So it's pretty thrilling to have Jean-Nicolas working with Willamette Valley fruit. And we are lucky enough today to have the associate winemaker, Tracy Kendall, with us. So, Tracy, can you tell us a little bit more about the wine?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be able to bring the wine here and share it with everyone. This is our 2014, so this was the inaugural vintage that we produced. It's a Willamette Valley blend, which for us is sort of our main production. The idea behind the wine was to find, what Jean-Nicolas considered to be Grand Cru vineyards throughout the Willamette Valley, and to be able to blend those together. When you're a winemaker in Vaune-Romani and you're working with things like Richebourg and Cros-Parentu, you don't blend them. So I think for him, it was a real intellectual challenge and an exciting part of this project. This wine is a blend of 7 vineyards. So we purchased Bishop Creek Vineyard, which is out in Yamhill, Carlton. Beautiful site, planted in the late 1980s, mostly own-rooted. No phylloxera yet, which is really lucky and exciting. And that's 33% of the blend. And then we have 6 other vineyards that are sourced kind of all throughout the Willamette Valley. Nisa Vineyard and Zenith, Momtazi. And we've used that to blend this up. It's about a 1,600 case production. 14 was a very warm vintage in Oregon, followed by 15 and 16, both also really warm vintages. So you taste the sort of fruit-forward, rich quality of a warm vintage in Oregon. But we're always trying to pick early and maintain natural acidity and balance, really not wanting to add anything in the winery. We do a lot of pump overs and high heat extraction to kind of round the palate out. But in general, we want the wine to be elegant and nuanced and balanced, which I think is most winemakers' goal. But hopefully we've hit that mark here. So, yeah.
This truffle butter is from Yamhill. We were up behind a vineyard pulling these truffles out of the ground yesterday. But I'm interested in 2 things. One, which is what's a pump over, and 2, this wine does seem more distinctly Burgundian and less like West Coast extraction. How is that received here in Oregon? I mean, it's still fruity and like big and agreeable, but like, what's the difference in approach?
I think the biggest difference in approach is, picking time. So we're picking early enough that in these past vintages, it's easy to wait for flavors to come around and really think that something's going to happen if you let the fruit hang. For us, we want to pick early enough that there's balance in the wine. And that, I think, gives you sort of that restraint, what you're calling more Burgundian, sort of more balance in the wine. But then the pump over, which is actually taking the juice from the bottom of the vat to the fermentation vessel and pouring it over the top. We do it really gently, try to keep as little oxygen exposure as possible. But that helps us to extract a lot of those flavors and that roundness and that richness that you're also experiencing. I think there are a lot of really incredible Oregon producers that are doing the same thing now and that are going for what we would consider a more nuanced, maybe Burgundian style. But I think they're all excited to have Burgundy saying, hey, Oregon's pretty cool. We're going to come over and see what we can do here too. So the Oregon wine community is fantastic, and they're really welcoming. They're really open, and I think they've been excited to see what newcomers can do. What do you think of the truffle butter with the wine?
Wonderful. I mean, just they're different creatures that somehow belong together, and that's something that I think we still have a hard time explaining, understanding how such different materials from the physical world can somehow seem to belong together the way they do. But it's a wonderful combination of the fruitiness and the brightness. The acidity is, I mean, it's a mouth-watering wine. And then the truffle is sort of, you furrow your brow and you ponder. And they just work beautifully together.
It was really neat to hear that the truffle came from Yamhill, from the same area.
Yeah,
so we don't experience that a lot in Oregon, I think, where you get that exact pairing from the same location like they do so much more in Europe.
And do you guys have conifers out on the properties that you have there? Have you gone truffle exploring out in the vineyards?
We haven't, but we should. I have a Labradoodle that I think is ready to shine.
They can train your Labradoodle up in no time. I mean, I trained my lab to look for the truffle oil. I just don't have any truffles out where I am, this type of truffle. Yeah.
Really?
And Dave actually got down on all fours and worked the ground himself. So if you were so inclined, you can actually smell truffles through the pine cover on the forest floor.
Yeah, ideally you want relatively new stands of Doug fir. And so I'm going to go out on the hotel grounds. I saw some right over there. I'm going to get down there. Maybe Harold go with, I don't know if you want to go, Pete. I'm going to go around and sniff, see if I can find one. And why not? It has a very distinct aroma in the ground. One of the weird things about these truffles is that they evolve quite a bit. The aroma you're getting out of this butter is kind of a lot of the aromas, and I think it's the aroma really that goes well with the wine rather than just eating it. I'm enjoying drinking the wine and having the aroma in the room, or kind of, to put it indelicately, on repetition in myself. But they work. They're non-competitive. I think most good pairings are really just non-compete agreements. There are very few pairings where it's actually a magical synergy.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. It makes a lot of sense, because often I think when we pair, yes, you're supporting one or the other, but you're actually distracting too. And so, they can be delicious together, but whether they're actually making the wine taste better or the food taste better, I think it's an interesting argument.
Yeah, no, I mean, the 90s and the 2000s were all about, I found this and it's similar to this, so let's put these two things together. But why? Why the hell would you do that? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. I mean, a lot of the best pairings from, were just because people ate that and were like, wow, that's really good together, Like, sorry, and a lot of them are trite and stupid, right? Port and Stilton is freaking delicious. You can't help it. Cheddar and Madeira taste delicious together. You know what I mean? It's like there's no right? I mean, it's not because they're related somehow.
But I think a goes together thing does kind of work. No.
No. I think what grows together, people have connoisseurships of together. They grow up together, and methods of preparation and consumption grow together, and therefore the pairing is good. But I don't think that there's no logical reason to me why two things that grow in the same chunk of dirt should taste good together. Like there's no, or like even come from the same area, except for the culture that grows up around what you have all the time would dictate that you find good ways of using them together.
It's interesting. We talk a lot about terroir in winemaking, obviously, and there's been a lot of debates about terroir and what is it and what does it mean, which I think is going back to what you're saying. Is it the fact that you grow something in silty clay loam that makes it taste similar to the wine, or is it really not actually something that's there, but it's that culture around how we make the wine and how we cook the food? And
I mean, Harold can talk the best to this, but I mean, there's reality and there's also a lot of hoo-ha marketing garbage, right?
Well, and also the judgment as to whether things go together is manufactured in our brains, and our brains are taking a lot of stuff into account besides just the flavors, the chemical inputs that we're getting from these two things. So I think a lot depends on culture, on experience, on all kinds of things.
But I mean, undoubtedly it is true that a particular climate and chunk of dirt has impacts on the flavor of the products grown in. This is undoubtedly true.
Yes.
But then you have other people who say, I can taste the actual mineral that's in the ground where it grew. Not true, right? I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
This wine is the perfect wine to be drinking while we talk about our next topic. It turns out the co-owner of Domaine, Nicolas J., along with Jean-Nicolas Maillot, is a music god. His name is Jay Boberg, and he co-founded the indie record label IRS, and then he was president of MCA Records. The number of excellent bands Jay brought to international fame is just jaw-dropping. I'm just going to have to call out two of my personal favorites, given my age and gender. Apologies, everyone, the Go-Go's and the Bangles. Yes, I've been dated, I know. So that brings us to our next subject, music in restaurants. Think of the ways in which a good restaurant taps into your senses. The food smells and tastes delicious, the decor is pleasing, but what about the background music? Dave Arnold, the Museum of Food and Drink, emphasizes a multisensory approach to food. So I'll bet you have, well, I already know you have some strong opinions about these kinds of things. In what way do you believe that music affects the dining experience?
Music affects the dining experience in a way that most restaurateurs don't think about, and it's not approached properly, and it's kind of a nightmare. I think most people, first of all, for years I ran a bar, and the way you run music in a bar is extremely different from the way you run music in a restaurant. They have different functions in the two places. And I think a lot of, especially young people, make the mistake of playing what they like. So, like, I love Bad Brains. Would I ever play Bad Brains in the bar? No, that would be stupid. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what you want to do.
Wait, for those of us who don't know what Bad Brains is.
Like seminal punk band from D.C., like one of the only like African-American punk bands you can name. They also did a lot of weird reggae. Their singer is a very troubled, kind of weird, homophobic, strange, semi-homeless man, but a freaking genius.
Is there a documentary about him right now?
I don't know.
I think there's a new one coming out.
I don't know.
We can save that for the dessert.
But like Eye Against Eye is like just like an intensely amazing, good album. I mean,
okay, so you said there's a different function for music in a bar and music in a restaurant.
Uh-huh.
What are the functions of?
Okay, so imagine when you're going to a restaurant and you're eating, then, you mentioned background music, right? So in a restaurant, the assumption is I'm sitting down to a meal with someone for a long period of time, and I'm here for a while, and I'm here to enjoy food and a certain amount of company and conversation. So the music shouldn't be too present. And in fact, when it is, that's a signal that we want you to get out. That's a signal, like when the music is highly present in a restaurant, it's a signal that we want you to eat quickly and leave. So you need to be kind of cool, but you can't be too kind of oppressive. In a bar, it depends on what time of day at a bar. If you all of a sudden put sleepy emo garbage on, like at the end of the night at a bar, like people are going to pass out in their Manhattans and not drink quickly and get out. They're not going to have a good night once they leave with their date. Like what you want at a certain point at a bar is some nice bump. You know what I mean? So like I used to play when I was I'm a firm believer in a human being choosing what music is going on right now, just because a room is so different. So in a bar is usually a smaller environment. So like if I know someone happens to be from Oakland, right? I'll play some like Oakland hip hop because I know that they know that that's kind of fun. And I won't play like the stuff that everyone else does. I'll play like RBL Posse or something like this. And then that means later they'll give me permission to play Too Short because they know that I listen to other stuff. And so they're like, oh yeah, play the Too Short. Then everyone likes the Too Short, right? And so you can kind of like play with people. And like that's how you got to pull in kind of the music nerds and the people who don't care about it. It's just by playing stuff that's consistently kind of that everyone can get into and causes people to be happy and drink more and enjoy their dates. So it's kind of a different. What do you think, Pete? You're the music expert. What do you think?
Well, I remember I wrote a story about music in restaurants for the Times years ago when talking about like music and how that was incorporated. And obviously we've both been partners with Dave Chang at different points. And, Dave definitely helped put too loud indie rock music in restaurants in lots of places, kind of following the lead of Mario Batali, who was the, first to play Zeppelin at a loud volume while charging you a lot of money for pasta and wine. But I find that as I get older, I like less and less music in my restaurants and bars. I like quiet places. I like quiet empty restaurants and places with jukeboxes stocked with 45, like the Great Jones Cafe in the East Village.
I love a good jukebox.
But I mean, I think, I know I'm just getting old and dying, so that's kind of what's influenced my thought process on it. But you wrote about the way that our senses affect our dining experience for Lucky Peach a few issues ago, and I believe it reached to sound because there's been some work or writing on that, isn't there? Hasn't there been?
Yeah,
Harold?
there has been, and what it boils down to is we're experiencing everything through our senses, and our brain doesn't separate inputs from taste, smell, vision, hearing, touch. We do that artificially in order to kind of understand what's going on. But in fact, we're taking it all in all at the same time, and the experience we're having is this whole experience. And generally speaking, when you divide it up and then ask the question, what happens to the way people experience flavor when we change the music, the basic answer is the louder the music and or the more distracting the music in whatever way, the less you actually notice about the flavor. So people can eat a meal in a loud restaurant and really not get much of any experience of taste and smell because your brain is being bombarded by all these other inputs, and they're overwhelming the experiences that you're ostensibly there to have.
Have you read the studies on airplane noise and taste?
No.
So there's recent studies. I haven't really gone into them heavy yet, but I thought maybe you had, where they're like, okay, airplanes are loud. Maybe this is why you can't enjoy food properly on an airplane. And they were looking at the different taste sensations and whether different ones were more or less blunted by the constant airplane noise.
Mm-hmm. So it's not the altitude. Everyone always says it's the altitude.
Well, that's what right. But think about it, like when you go visit Aspen, you're at roughly the altitude they're pressurizing to or higher. And
Right.
Does stuff taste like garbage in Aspen? Maybe because they're charging so much it does. But, maybe not for other reasons. But if I may, one second, the jukebox, I think, is an interesting thing. I think analysis of the jukebox is important, and it's very different from modern things where people can put on whatever they want, because the jukebox is extremely customer-centric. So the jukebox is a really good bargain between the bar owner and the customer. The bar owner says, these are the songs from which you may choose. And then the customer gets to then choose which particular one of those songs they do. So it's this awesome agreement, and then customers can interact with each other over the choices that they've made. So like one of my favorite bars had garbage liquor. It was a bunch of degenerate folks, but we all loved the jukebox, and we would just go and play different things and rib each other for our choices. It's really kind of a lost, awesome social component to going out.
That's a great point. But people love the interactive dining experience. It's interesting that that's sort of fallen away, the jukebox.
Right, and you can use it to judge people harshly or to be like, I would like to drink with those people, or why did they put the Skinner on now?
Yeah, right. And you can secretly like the one that you're denigrating. Like you can be like, Hall & Oates, yeah. You know what I mean?
Hall & Oates, always.
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 Actually, I think that would be good dining music. It's relaxing. It's upbeat.
I feel like that's one of the great kitchen test questions I know Wiley Dufresne of W50 used to ask, was ask a terrified young stage 2 or 3 days in, go all manly style up to him and be like, what do you think of Hall & Oates? And they don't know what to say because Hall & Oates is kind of a foofy 80s band. And if they said no, it's like, oh my, it's like, no, you're so wrong. And it's like, you're clearly going to be, yeah.
Harold, the article you wrote for Lucky Peach, did you happen to speak with Charles Spence at Oxford University for that?
I didn't speak with him for that, but I've spoken with him many times. And he has a wonderful book. I think it's called The Perfect Meal, which is a compilation of the research on all the senses and their roles in the experience of eating.
Yeah, I know. I've interviewed him once. He has the Cross-Modal Research Laboratory. And I know he's done studies where he's found that if you have a lower-pitched music, that the food tastes more bitter, I think. I'm recalling correctly.
Yeah. So this is, in my mind, kind of like the research on cannabinoids in truffles. There are people who are really fascinated by particular aspects of particular things, so much so that they're way ahead of everyone else, and asking questions like, if we change the overall pitch or the tonality or the key in which the music is being played, what does that do to people's perceptions of various flavors? But again, it's kind of dissecting things to the point that bitterness it's almost, when it comes to eating a meal, an abstraction. You're tasting everything all at once. So he is doing really interesting dissection work on things like that, but what it actually means, I'm not so sure.
I feel like now I'm trying to remember, this was a few years ago that I interviewed him, but I feel like he was talking about wine labels that played music and restaurant placemats that played music, or plates according to what you ordered.
Like a Hallmark greeting card on the side of a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Well, but that's
Do
horrifying.
you have a jingle that you would put on your wine? Is there an ice cream truck song that could make me buy more wine when I walk past a bottle?
Does the ice cream truck song make you buy wine? The actual one?
The ice cream truck song makes me run in the other direction, because then I'm just going to have to buy my kids more of that crappy ice cream.
Do you ever hang out in Williamsburg back in the day?
No,
In Brooklyn, there was an ice cream truck that had only 2 or 3 notes working. And it was like intensely weird. It would play constantly because they were selling drugs. And so they were driving around with this ice cream truck music that had like only 3 or 4 notes working.
Okay, well, I have a question for you guys. If you're paying a lot of money for a very fine dining experience, I think I already know Peter's answer. Would you rather have total silence, or would you rather have some music that was chosen to be complimentary playing?
I wouldn't mind something quiet in the background. I mean, really in the background. But yeah, if you really want to, in my experience, if you really want to concentrate on the flavor of a meal, or the a tasting menu that's been very, very carefully crafted, then I eat alone. Because the moment you have to pay attention to someone else and where they are and what they're thinking and so on, I mean that's a wonderful, different kind of experience. But to really get to know a chef's food fully, I like to eat there alone. And silence would probably be good too.
That's why you never call me. I think as much as I like to be a grumpy old man and say I like silent restaurants, I've certainly had experiences at like Del Posto, the Mark Ladner's fancy restaurant in the Mario Battaglia family, where like there's a piano guy playing in the corner, and every once in a while he'll slip a Radiohead song into the piano repertoire, and that little acknowledgement of something, it gives me something to connect to and is funny. Or thinking about eating at Momofuku Ko and Ghetto Boys comes on, and so I think that there is a role to play in it, but in general, the older I get, the quieter I like it.
The real question is which Ghetto Boys song? And
Mind playing tricks on me?
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
silence in a restaurant is, unless you're alone, is a nightmare kiss of death, and it's really mean to your customers to not provide some level of music, because there's nothing more awkward than dead silence at a table when you're not alone. And so music, if it's not loud and not intrusive, still provides some sort of current of continuity to the experience of what's going on that allows you to shut up for a minute and not feel awkward.
All right. Well, just to close this out, let's go around the table and everyone say the type of music or the artist who annoys them most in dining experiences. And I have to say, I went on Spotify to listen to some of their dining playlists, and I'm not going to name a particular artist, but for whatever reason, I don't know why these playlists are so popular, because they're just loaded with acoustic singer-songwriter type music, which is just the worst, because your mind wants to hear the lyrics, but you actually don't want to hear the lyrics because you want to be talking with your dining companions. So I'm just going to say anything acoustic singer-songwriter just doesn't work. How about you, Dave?
Anything screechy. Like anything where you're like, you know what I mean? Like anything like that is, I don't like that.
I think I'll answer in the inverse and just say I like when I hear songs that probably shouldn't be played. Like when I hear like Noi records or like weird like 70s krautrock records, I'm always happy, because I'm like, oh yeah, this guy knows this is a good record and everyone hates it, but he's still playing it. So those are the moments when I enjoy it most, is when.
So you love what everyone else hates, basically.
Yeah.
No, you like that they hate it, right?
Yes. I enjoy others' discomfort.
Harold, tell us what you like or hate most in restaurants in terms of music.
No, I almost have to abstain, because I'm so little up with music. I mean, popular music, that most of it I just don't recognize. So I would have to say that the music I like is the music I actually recognize.
Anything with bagpipes, right?
Dude, you might have found the only place where bagpipes is not welcome, and that's during dinner.
Well, I think we need to move on to our third course, which is the microwave. 7 decades have gone by since the first microwave was introduced. Harold McGee, you have always pushed the envelope in your commitment to using the microwave as a serious cooking tool. Are we taking our microwaves for granted, and what should we be doing with them that we're not?
Well, I wouldn't exactly say I've been pushing the envelope with the microwave at all, so much as trying to figure out how to use it so that it is a useful piece of equipment, because it can very easily not be. And I think the main reason it hasn't been is that it's really hard to know what's going on behind that closed door. You can't really follow it. You can't see the flame. You can't see the burner. You really have no idea what's going on in there. So you have to spend some time getting to know your machine. And to me, the single key to getting it to work well, and I use it every day for things like, I think you can rewarm a cup of coffee so that it's pretty good with a microwave. I toast nuts in it. I heat up milk for making yogurt. I cook vegetables. I mean, I think anything that you can steam, basically, you can cook much more quickly and efficiently in a microwave, and fewer dishes. I'm a very lazy cook, so I don't like to clean up. But the most important thing is to use the lower power settings. Don't just turn it on and leave it at that. Machines these days have lots of different power settings, and usually what you want is something between 50% and 75% of full power, and that gives you, I think, great results for all kinds of things.
I feel like I've seen some very complex recipes written by you that call for microwave cooking.
They were sort of proofs of principle, that you could use a microwave to make candy, for example, which is not intuitively obvious.
No.
But it just seemed to me that the one thing microwaves are really good at is getting water really hot. That's how microwaves work, is to excite water molecules in food. So relatively dry foods don't heat up very quickly in a microwave. Water attracts the microwaves and heats up very quickly. So in candy making, a lot of the time what you're doing is boiling off water to concentrate the sugar to make the texture you want. And it turns out that a microwave is a great way to do that, because that's exactly where the energy is going, is into those water molecules to bust them out of the sugar solution and into the air.
Interesting. Dave, I think you're kind of a mad scientist with your food technology. What have you been doing lately with your microwave?
Lately, I've worked a lot with microwaves. Microwaves are interesting. I think no one's really come up with the hyper killer app for them, and people don't take the time to understand how they work and what's kind of cool about them. And there is a lot. I once tried to build a microwave vacuum dehydration rig, because a lot of people were working on vacuum microwave dehydration. But the problem is that when you suck a vacuum, all of a sudden you get huge plasma problems. So I would have food turn into giant plasma orbs on the inside of my microwave because I had built this vacuum rig.
Give us a visual.
Just incredible, like huge, coming off of relatively normal things. It's easy. See, one of the weird things about microwaves is what Harold says is true. It heats up water, not the dry stuff. However, once something becomes dry, it doesn't take a lot of energy to push it from 0 to 1 billion, because you don't need to go through a phase transition for that to happen. As soon as you get any carbon or any sort of blackening or burning of a food product, that part becomes a huge acceptor of microwaves and goes, and that's how you get these weird grape effects with plasma balls. There's lots of cool things to do with the microwave. People don't think about, what do you do? People probably here don't use quart containers because they're not considered socially acceptable, not environmental, even though they are, because you use quart containers a lot. But here in New York, we get things in a quart container, and then you try to reheat it in a quart container, and this is not an ideal format for reheating in a microwave, because microwave heat penetration is directly related to the wavelength of the microwave that's used, and it doesn't penetrate that far.
Wait, what do you mean by quart container?
Quart container, like a plastic quart. Like if you got soup from a Jewish deli, it would come in a plastic quart container.
Yeah, and people think that they're not kind of good, but in fact, the resins that they're made out of don't have any of the nasty things that you're worried about normally in plastic, and you can use them for an infinite length of time. They're actually not. They even were very thoughtful. I'll give you a point. So in the microwave, the bottom of a quart container is made out of polypropylene, while the top of the container is made out of polyethylene. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because the polyethylene part has a much lower temperature tolerance, so when you overheat a product in a quart container, the top will blow off rather than rupturing the whole thing, leaking all over your microwave. Nice of them, right?
Wow.
So it's like, anyway, my point... I forget what my point was. My point is that what you want to do is spread your stuff out in a thin layer and then turn it a couple of times during the reheating, not like try to heat a brick that's 5 inches across, because it just won't ever work.
The thing I think about, I don't own a microwave and have never owned a microwave.
Oh.
I have an aversion to countertop appliances that I don't use all the time, but I know you can do cool things in it. You can make brown butter in it. But I haven't experimented a lot with microwaves. The thing I think about whenever I think about microwaves is a story from Dave Arnold's art school days. Because before he was a food technologist, if that's a word that you use to describe what you do, he made or
wanted to make a lot of art projects that involved food things. Do you have microwave science in your family? My grandpa, who's still alive, he's like 98 now, was a radar designer starting in World War II, which is, that's how they figured out microwaves. This guy was noticed that the candy bars in his pocket were melting when he was next to radar things. And in fact, along the old early warning radar systems on Thanksgiving, they would put turkeys into the dishes at the focus point and cook their turkeys in the radar dishes because it's very similar wavelength. So I was like, hey, Grandpa, what I want is a magnetron, which is what they use in both radars and microwaves. I want a big one, and I'm going to create an entire room that's a microwave on like a big Lazy Susan, so the whole thing spins. So here's the idea. You set the table with raw stuff, right? And it goes me, and it keeps going around, and then... And it's a glass-walled dining room, and everyone is standing outside of it looking in. Yeah, and then at the very end, see, this is the part about the carbon. If you get it just right, you should be able to get the candle to light at the last second, ding, and have the candle light. It's all theoretically possible, but it just takes a lot of work.
When will this be in the Museum of Food and Drink? This seems like
my grandpa wouldn't help me, and I think now he's a little old. So it's, I don't know. My dad also, who's also a double E, would never help me do it. So I just need to find someone who wants it to happen, like some dumb TV show maybe wants to do it, and we'll do it. Fund the making of a glass-walled dining room with a huge magnetron on one of the walls to cook dinner. Yeah, I would feel slightly unsafe going into that. I would want that door to be really propped open. That's why, although I refer to using the microwave as nuking things, there's no residual anything, and in fact, they're so freaking safe. That's why they have all of that mesh. You can't. So, in fact, even if the mesh was quite a bit bigger, you could get really close. Like the reason they have the mesh and that other little plastic wall in front of it is that there's no radiation penetrating beyond. And I've bought microwave detectors to check them, and the only thing that can go wrong is if you don't have a properly closing door, and so there's a gap in the door.
Yeah, Dave, I was going to ask you about that. Why are the radar technicians not getting burned if the candy bars in their pockets are melting?
They were. I mean, I'll tell you another thing. That this has to be apocryphal, right? This has to be apocryphal. But my grandpa was visiting the radar guys who are like in Alaska on their own on the early warning systems, and the story has to be apocryphal, that they would slightly scramble their nads on the way out to town so that if they were going to do stuff that they wouldn't have to use prophylactics, but they also wouldn't get anyone pregnant.
Oh dear.
Precision application.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Who was the first one to go?
Well, I think they had to be bored as hell, right, on this radar base in Alaska. Going into town. Yeah, I mean, most of my microwave experimentation was from being bored as a child around Easter and making Peeps explode in the microwave. Have you ever blow up light bulbs in a microwave? No, because I was not that
strong or courageous of a child. Does it work? Is it easy?
In college, I found a microwave. Some idiot. By the way, if you find broken equipment on the side of the road, probably it works. It's probably the power cord that's bad. So if you're handy, you can fix almost anything. So that's what happened. We got a microwave, and I found, i.e., stole like several cases of light bulbs from the college, and we just used to sit there and like drink whiskey and blow up light bulbs all night. And like they would just blow up in different ways, different colors. I once had one that exploded out but didn't actually rupture, so it looked like an Edgerton photo of a light bulb exploding. And it's fun to do like a 100 watt versus a 300 watt.
Do they explode in different ways?
They do. What happens is the plasma arc goes from the filament to the glass, just like one of those plasma things, and eventually it stays in one place too long. It overheats and ruptures it there, and then so we had broken glass all over the bottom of our microwave at all times.
So from peeps to light bulbs, all kinds of fun things to cook in microwaves.
Listeners, you heard it here first.
Don't break fluorescent bulbs like that, though. Mercury inside. Don't.
Well, I think on that note, we should wrap this discussion up with some dessert, which now that I've been reading Harold's recipes, I know you can make a really amazing dessert in the microwave. But like Peter, I don't own one. I never have, so I don't know how to do it. Harold, what's your best microwave dessert recipe, in your own opinion?
Microwave dessert recipe.
Or candy. I don't know.
Are you going to bust out the Nicholas Curti?
We have a microwave mug cake on Lucky Peach that's a perennial favorite of. And when I was at Harvard once doing something with you, I remember going to the bookstore and a student at Harvard had published an entire microwave mug cookbook. So it's a genre that.
And in fact, one of the student groups there came up with a mix that you could put in a can and then spray it into your mug. You just shake it, spray it, cook it, so you could make a cupcake in like 30 seconds from raw batter, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, in the mid-2000s, microwave cake was a huge, that's really overstating it, was a phenomenon because it cooks evenly, but you don't get the browning effect. I mean, that's the issue with microwaves. To get browning effect, you need these microwave acceptors that can heat up well past the boiling point of water so that you can get the kind of browns. But for steamed style desserts, and there were some fabulous examples of it. Michael Skanis used to work that way. Johnny Azzini did some microwave cakes. There's some Europeans who did some good microwave cakes. It's all a matter of what effect do you want, and does this get that for you?
Yeah, and you can do the touch up with a torch.
Yes, you can. But I would not do it with a direct flame torch, Harold, as you know, but that's a whole other discussion to get into.
Well, here on the Four Top, dessert is much safer because our version of dessert is just something foodie that you have been thinking about this week or listening to or watching. And I'll just share my dessert item first. I just need to stick up for Oregon wine right now. I sat down with the January 23rd issue of The New Yorker, and I got sucked into a piece called My Father's Cellar by John Seabrook. And I just need to take issue with it. It's actually very interesting. It's a lengthy ode to his father's rigorous and scholarly wine collecting habit. But it culminates with John Seabrook's own longtime battle with alcoholism, all of which is interesting, and I'm glad he's overcome this challenge. But it is really unfortunate that he finishes the piece by saying, I took what I hope will be my last drink on what would have been my father's 99th birthday. Here's to you, Dad, I silently said as I emptied my final bottle of $20 Oregon Pinot Noir from the corner liquor store into a water glass, even worse, and glugged it down. And then he says, it was no Cheval Blanc 59. Come on, John, that's a great piece, but I take issue with dragging Oregon Pinot through the mud like that. But anyway, that's do check out the piece if you're interested in either wine collecting or alcoholism. It's a pretty interesting piece. Harold, do you have anything you've been thinking about this week that you want to share with us?
Well, the thing I came up with is it's only loosely related to food as we think of it, but it's kind of at the root of much of the food we eat. I found this wonderful book called Plankton.
Ooh.
The subtitle being Wonders of the Floating World, with this wonderful reference to that period in Japanese history. And it's basically about all the things in the oceans that drift. That's what plankton are. So it's everything from viruses to these little just incredibly beautiful glass diatoms, things, beautiful little structures sculptures made out of limestone that are alive. The photography in this book is really remarkable, and it's essentially about all these things that are at the bottom of the food chain, feeding the things that we end up enjoying as luxuries, and the diversity of creatures and just the sheer visual beauty of those creatures is amazing. So I go to that book not so much to learn anything as just to sit there in awe at what is going on in the oceans.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. Peter, what have you been focusing on this week?
I've been working on a barbecue book for Lucky Peach for months now, and I just came from Murfreesboro, Illinois, 2 hours southeast of St. Louis, where I was at something called BBQ MBA. A bunch of pitmasters got together at 17th Street Bar and Grill and talked about barbecue for 2.5 days. Like, that was a reasonable thing to do. And and it's winter in New York, so I'm not doing any barbecue right now. I don't have anywhere to cook inside the city, so I'm just kind of plotting the return of good weather and getting to smoke stuff. And I guess the 2 ingredient combinations that I'm fixated on right now are it's more exciting when you call it a Dalmatian rub, but that means 50% salt and 50% black pepper, which is kind of agreed upon with all these pitmasters I talked about. All you really need to rub on meat before you smoke it, all the flavor that you're going to add when you make barbecue, you should be putting on after you've properly smoked cooked the piece of meat how you want to in your smoker. And then the thing that I learned about down at BBQ MBA is with most cuts you can just put your Dalmatian right on it and throw it in the smoker and it's fine. With some things, people like to have a moist layer. And I don't know. I'll probably hit Harold up to explain like the evaporative insulation properties of covering your meat in mustard before smoking it for 14 hours. But I always thought it was just mustard. And when I was down there, I learned that everyone uses a 50-50 blend of yellow mustard and pickle juice. And for some reason, that just delights the hell out of me. And I can't wait to make it. So salt, pepper, yellow mustard, and pickle juice.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about intensely boring things all week, like so much so that my wife doesn't even want to hear me talk about them because I'm working on a low temperature cooking book. And I've been doing like heavy research on, not research in a science sense, but just research on what exactly is happening to meat. So, I did a bunch of reading and working on this about 10 years ago when I first started kind of teaching low temperature cooking, which is like sous vide. People call it sous vide. I lost that argument. It's not really mostly sous vide. Anyway, whatever. I'm not going to get into it. I lost. But then I taught it for a number of years, practiced it, and now it's always a good idea to go and try to learn things fresh again. And I think in everything I do, the hard part is that you need to reevaluate yourself. So many people I know, even at the top of their game, they get in a rut because they accept what they've already learned, and they're not willing to throw away everything they've learned before, even if it's based on years of practice, and try to look at it with fresh eyes again. And so every couple of years when I'm going to work on a big project, I try to do that, and I'm always surprised how little I freaking know about anything.
That's a major life lesson. Thank you. A special thanks to all you panelists. Peter Meehan, the patron saint of the indie rock food publication Lucky Peach and author of Power Vegetables. I don't know. I don't know how many truffles you were fed to be convinced to tape a second episode with us, but thank you for doing it.
Thank you for having me.
And Harold McGee, whose name is as well known as the word microwave to those of us who work in the food industry. You can find him at curiouscook.com. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure.
And Dave Arnold, head of the Culinary Technology Department at the International Culinary Center, and also the host of a radio show. Is that correct, Dave?
Yeah, Cooking Issues. Call in all of your technical-related cooking. If you have a technical question, I'll solve it. There you go.
Well, hey, folks, we want you to savor the conversation with us. Please subscribe to The Foretop on iTunes, NPR One, or however you get your podcasts. And please leave us a rating. At facebook.com/theforetop, you can suggest topics for us to discuss after you like our page, of course. And tweet us, please, at @4top, all one word. Today's show was recorded at the beautiful Allison Inn and Spa during the Oregon Truffle Festival. You can read all about our show on the OPB website. Our producer is Alex Ward. Special thanks to OPB sound supervisor Stephen Cray. And our theme music was performed by the incomparable wine importer Kermit Lynch. I hope you can join us for our next episode, and please tell your friends about the Foretop. Bye-bye now.
Nuit blanche, nuit blanche, nuit blanche.
I don't care what. Always tip properly. Always tip your server properly. It's a freaking nightmare. Like, I don't care. Like, this is how they make their living. You make your living and you get a paycheck. They need the tip. Tip.